Okay, thank you.
Good job.
That looks more normal.
You want? Yeah, we can move down so you don't have that big thing in your
Okay.
face.
I can go back to the corner, but this is fine.
I haven't, but I mean, have you really tried to do this on your feet?
No.
This is terrible. I mean, I even have little fingers, but. No. Having a challenge. It was just like that. I'm not the most patient girl, so.
Is it one of those long, yucky ones? That
Yeah, of course it is. Yes.
Or if you get one wrong.
Yeah, we're about to find out, right?
Jeff Wise going to that street today. I'm not going anywhere near that.
Crazy.
So, another question is,
Hello.
Aspen is diseased. Do you know how to tell if an aspen tree is diseased?
Welcome and thanks for stopping.
The door was open for reading.
You're like, oh, I'm a
Yeah,
sucker.
I guess
Stopped in.
looking at the leaves or what?
Yeah.
What do you see?
I thought it's some stroke or something.
Sonia.
Oh my god, it does keep going, doesn't it? It's like 20 digits long, I bet you.
Some sort of growth?
I'm writing everything down so I can.
Noise.
It's just like rubbing it in.
It is.
And now it'll probably say there's no connection.
Oh no, a check mark.
Success!
Oh my god, it actually worked.
Thank goodness.
Well. Oh no.
Sorry.
Oh, there you are.
Does it take a minute to
Well, that's kind of funny. No.
What's that?
Now. Get back there, buddy.
Let's just watch a movie.
Would you rather do that?
I'll pay the $2.
Amen.
So now comes an hour.
So where's our food at? What do you think?
Why would the city's internet have all that stuff on it?
Right.
Oh, it comes on these monitors. It comes loaded.
Yeah. Settle down, my buddy.
School of Rock. Let's do that.
We can torture everybody with Barbie.
Yeah.
It was great.
Did you watch it?
A bunch of the ladies from DSBS watched it together. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was fun.
It was.
It was laughably funny, like the whole time.
All right, dude.
All I could think of is they had a really good time doing
What
it.
about on the
All right, you can tell.
Yeah.
Kate McKinnon's Weird Barbie was my favorite.
You know, I had had some kids corner cancer.
Just do a stir shot
because
and
anytime
I'll
I put them out or nobody would buy them.
Shouldn't it?
No.
So after the Barbie movie,
I remember seeing
I
this.
set them up with the Barbie
Oh, do your
and they had
There you go.
swing jumps and
I'm gonna go for
shirts
it.
with the buttons on them buttoned. And I had a dang Barbie for my graduation.
You're running.
I'll bet.
I know. Oh. Okay, guys. Well, regardless, I'll start this at least so we can be online. And we'll get our call going. And we'll deal with this.
Oh, you probably had to start that first then, maybe.
Mm-mm. No, not yesterday anyways.
You did this yesterday?
Oh dear. Not, well, this just was ready for me. It just pulled it right up. I was like, okay, oops.
should have kept that cheat sheet from the other week.
Yeah.
There's a
Well,
cheat
it'll be
sheet?
different.
Well,
You did it last
it
week.
was
won't be
right,
like
it was
this.
after court.
Oh, okay.
Please enter your access code followed by the pound or hash sign. To enable audio controls, please enter your audio PIN followed by the pound or hash sign. If you The organizer has not yet started the meeting.
that's right.
You will be placed on hold until the organizer starts the go-to meeting.
Started to build up.
Well, there's good news. There's fairly now.
They're not even trying to get the, Cody's challenge today. Is that what that was? I thought it was wind.
Now we still don't know this. I don't know, guys. Anyone have any other ideas?
You don't think it's the PC connection?
It wouldn't take it. It said no.
You couldn't click on it?
It wouldn't let me do it.
Connected devices.
Maybe Dave knows.
Just because, of course.
Maybe.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. Leave it open.
Okay.
Dave's a computer guy.
Well then. Yeah.
Dave will talk to you.
Look, it's one of that works.
Oh my God, is that
We'll all clap.
Okay,
You do know? Look at
where is the projector that used to be in the middle? They moved it now, where is it?
Isn't it right there?
No, that's.
Oh, it's a monitor.
Oh, no, we're
Yeah.
using a monitor.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's something she can do with the remote. She's trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Everything's connected. Oh, it was connected.
Yeah, this is all weird
So is this
too.
new?
Right, I'm changing it, so, oh, there you go.
How in the heck?
I told you.
Did you try turning it off and back on again?
Is that what you did?
Yeah, I unplugged the power on the driver.
You know how much it charges for that?
That was hilarious.
$1 for pushing the button, $99 for the button to pay.
Fantastic.
Oh, I love it.
Thanks for being patient.
You can't make this stuff up.
Can't.
Thanks for waiting for me to start the meeting.
We're late, by the way.
I know.
5:35.
I didn't have today's roadmap.
It's like
Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Yes. Benedetto.
Here.
Boise. Here. Wiesler.
Here.
Bloomer. Richter.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
And Battles.
Here.
Okay, the agenda we've got, tonight is communications from Urban Renewal Agency, City Council rep, and County rep, and then we'll move on to old business. There was an application for a sign at Ace Hardware. That's going to be tabled until September 27th. I think they're still waiting on information from the steel manufacturer about the size of the sign. And then we'll review the downtown revitalization plan draft survey questions, and then review the allowable use tables. And I'm not sure about this new business resolution. 2301 as amended.
She provided a copy, and yeah, we can chat about it when we get there.
Okay. And then written correspondence, and then petitions and communications from the audience after that. So, what's going on?
Sometimes Lonnie has to do it from this computer. Is that one on?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she has to do it from up there.
soon enough.
There we go.
Is it recording, Cody?
It is.
There should be a mute all from the host.
Yeah, that one's not got that option.
Are there copies of that survey too? Is that in?
There are, yeah.
Okay, all right, just curious. So the
Would you like?
crowd, no, I have one.
Okay. Yes. And the resolution is also there. Okay.
You ready to go again?
Yep, go right ahead.
Well, I don't have much to report on the Urban Renewal Agency update other than they approved their bylaws. We're still kind of waiting to see what kinds of funds are going to be available, and there's still really no applications associated with that. Jen, do you have anything from the city you'd like to report on?
I will share that the request for a zoning change for the Clap residents came to City Council last night and was not approved. So I believe their next step, if they wanted to, would be appeal, but that would be the same body of people. It would go back to City Council. So there's an update there. And then the other thing I'll just mention is that it is anticipated that City Council will be reviewing a draft airport boundary and new interlocal agreement with the county in over the next two the next two council meetings. And the reason why I bring that up here is to just say that once that process happens, the next step is for the airport board to be providing a new airport master plan for FAA approval and to our respective groups, council and the commissioners. And I, just based on talking with staff and with the committee members on council, I believe that this planning board should plan on this body being an active role in reviewing that plan draft, that master plan draft, and providing feedback. They're going to rely on this group heavily to make sure that what's in there is congruent with our other policies and documents. So just expect that to come soon.
Okay. Marie, do you have anything from the county?
Nope, nothing this time.
All right. Guess we're on to old business. As I said, the Ace Hardware sign public review and design review is tabled until the September 27th meeting. So I guess we'll go to the downtown revitalization plan draft survey questions. Do you want to lead off that discussion, Cody?
Yeah, sure. Thank you guys for all your comments last time. I'll be the broken record and just keep reminding everyone, you guys have a lot of really good survey information out there that's very recent, and I never want to run the risk of over surveying your community. So the downtown plan and the growth policy both, I'm really planning to pull a lot of that survey data of recent into those documents, so we aren't asking the same questions over and over. And there were a couple of concerns about the validity of surveys. I totally get it. I totally get it. Unfortunately, it's one of the most broadly accepted forms of pulling a larger audience. And we have to prove some outreach as part of this process. It's a requirement by the state. So, for that reason, this is just a component of that information that we're pulling. I did make the edits to this draft per your suggestions from the last round. There was a couple questions, I think 7 and 9, where you were hoping for more of a sliding scale instead of rating. Mm-hmm. And the only problem is we use SurveyMonkey because it's easy. It's accessible. I'll say that, not easy, accessible. And we can't few sliding scales within one question on multiple topics. So they'd all have to become their own questions, essentially. Which I think at that point then we're getting into a massive survey. The reality is people aren't as likely to complete something that takes more than 5 minutes. So I really, really encourage you to not put something forward that's really lengthy. And again, I'll just remind you, this is just general information that's going in to guide some objectives that then the planning board and stakeholders will be reviewing and putting forth into the document. So this stuff isn't going to go in and necessarily write the document for you. It's just going to serve to focus you towards the objectives in an action plan, if that makes sense.
Okay. I guess we'll go around the table and let's start with you, Sue. Do you have any comments or questions about the updated survey?
Well, there were a few kind of sort of confusing things where you can sort of figure it out, like on item 4, do you own a home or business in the central business district? Well, if you answer those questions, they don't some of them don't necessarily have anything to do with the answer of number 4, but we're really not declaring that that's a yes or no because they have all these other things here. So I think you could get at the same thing in a differently worded thing.
Okay.
So that's a thought. And you'll have a lot of people skip the age part, but this is Red Lodge, so that's going to happen.
Is that true?
I think you could condense those two.
Those
Yeah.
two?
Are you over? Are you under or over that kind of thing, and just have maybe 2 or 3?
Oh, just broader categories, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Like not more than 4 or 5.
Okay. And the residency question is, I'm not sure whether it's needed or not, but I think it's useful and it's clear. The primary occupation, I'm presuming that we're accepting a very loose definition for occupation, as in how are you occupied, rather than are you paid by anybody to do something specific. Because you could read that either way, and there are in some instances where primary might include more than one of the things here. And even though you might want the primary, it would be helpful, I think, if the survey were designed where it wouldn't kick out the answers if somebody answered more than one.
Oh, yeah, that's easy enough.
Okay. 6 and 7, I think, are some of our, I think we can get some of our more useful information from this. But then, like on 6, you're asking what you like most about the Central Business District, and some of these things in item 6 aren't necessarily related to the Central Business District. Although it's useful information to have, it might not be directly applicable. The only part, for example, that we have actually in the Central Business District is Pride Park, and it's very useful and people really like it.
Right.
But when they're answering the question, they may be thinking in other terms about other parks. And you can get a sense of community hanging out in the Central Business District. Sometimes it depends on which bar you frequent. But in other times, your community isn't really there if you have a neighborhood and you hang with your neighborhood people, and you have very much a sense of community. But you only go down to Broadway if you have you have an errand, specific errand to run. You have people that live here and love the place that spend very little time on Broadway.
Right.
A post office is another issue, but we don't have questions about the post office here. I remember the most impressive thing I learned about Red Lodge when I was back visiting was if you went by the post office a year or two after the last time you were here, people would still remember your name. Now that's a sense of community.
Right.
Okay. And I know there's a question on here about a place you would compare the comparable community to Red Lodge, and I have, I think it's a great question, but I've gone over and over and over in my mind every place we visited when we were looking for a place like Red Lodge. And there were dozens, and I couldn't think of one I could use for an example there.
Yeah.
And I'll let somebody else fill in with some things.
Holly?
Well, I agree with, and I had some of those very same things on mine, so I'm not going to repeat all that. But yeah, I think for one thing, I think you said, you should be able to fill it out in 5 minutes. There's no way you can fill this out in 5 minutes. If you're going to actually think about it and rate, 10 different things from 1 to 10 on 4 different questions, that's not possible. I think that a lot of this could be consolidated. There are a lot of, occupations listed here. Education is not listed here, which is a really important part of this community, but I don't know if it's a part of downtown community.
Right. Yeah, those demographics, we generally pull from census, so just heads up.
So, I also wonder in the introduction why we didn't address the revitalization plan, because basically that's what we're doing. We're looking at that. We're redoing the revitalization plan that was written, to address downtown.
So I think that's something that everyone probably needs to come to a consensus on is, what do you want to call this? Because there's been some concerns that, is it really a revitalization? You're not necessarily revitalizing.
I know, but what I'm saying is that I'm not saying that we're writing a new revitalization plan, but that's where this got started, is that we need to take a look at that and update it and call it whatever. We can change the name, whatever we want to do, but that's where the whole thing started.
Okay, yeah, we can reference that. I'm sorry, I was misunderstanding you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
fine. You probably weren't even born when that revitalization
plan
was written, but it's old, but that's where the whole conversation started.
Right.
We need to take a look at this because this is old, right?
Careful.
I know. I'm old. You are not. And then some of the same concerns as Sue. When you are putting how important, extremely, not extremely, isn't somewhat important and not so important both the same thing?
Kind of, but oddly enough,
I'm trying to condense this.
Yeah, in doing these surveys, and yeah, I see where you're going. I've probably done over 100 of these for different types of these plans, and there is a big breakdown in those small answers like that, which seems odd, yes. But.
Again, trying to figure out how to kind of condense some of these. Because here you have one, if you want rated, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 things that people are supposed to rate. That's more than a 5-minute task.
That that one might be one where it would be useful or not. To say pick your top 6 or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I mean, and, do things like homelessness, do they actually refer to the central business district, or is that a community-wide issue? Housing. Some of these things to me are really community-wide issues that may contribute certainly to the central business district, but aren't directly related. Anyway, that's it.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yeah. It's enough. I can come back if I think of something else or miss something.
Marie?
Well, I'm wondering, speaking of consolidating, there's just even the first 3 questions, and I'm not saying to get rid of them, but aren't those demographic? Don't we already have that data?
Yeah, but here's the problem. The state wants to know that when you're writing these planning documents, both your downtown plan and your growth policy, which we'll probably use this data for both, but when you're writing those, they want to know that it's great that people visiting are filling this in, but they want to know that the people in town, in the city limits, have where their voice is in the answers. So that's why it's important to include those questions. I know it seems kind of pointless, but they really want to know where their answers are coming from.
So
Okay.
who's this survey going to? Is it going to get mailed to people? Or is it
That's up to
Google
you
Groups
guys.
or?
Yeah, generally, I mean, there's different ways of getting the survey out. Different communities handle it differently. So it's going to kind of be up to you, and I'll probably rely on Courtney for a lot of that as well. And then some of the stakeholders that a few of you have contacted me with, some folks. Generally, we do obviously some social media types of advertising with the code or the website, whatever, to go to it, however people want to access it. Some communities do hard copies because there's some individuals that just don't do the electronic stuff, and that's great. I've had some towns include a little notice in with the water or sewer bills, directing them to this. Some folks have done door-to-door. Some have put them in various businesses. So there's a variety of methods. It's going to be what works best for Red Lodge.
My second question is
Yeah.
the meat and potatoes of this. I think we need to chisel down before we really get into, I mean, we can dot all the I's and cross all the T's, but what information are we really trying to get out of this that we haven't already gotten in the past? So what is the essence of this survey that's different from the revitalization plan? That's always kind of a question I've had in my head with this. What are we really trying to find out? Yes, I know your age. Yes, I know where you live. Yes, I know if you're a business owner. But what am I looking for? What am I trying to improve? What information am I trying to glean out of it that will matter?
Yep.
I don't think I'm posing that correctly, but
No, I think I kind of understand where you're at.
I really want to drill down on what information are we concerned about, whether that building has a red door or a green door? Are we concerned about, like, it's very broad what we're talking about. We're talking about social issues in here. We're not talking about a revitalization, in my opinion, as far as styles of buildings, the essence of what we want, the feel of what we want Red Lodge to be, and that's kind of a very it's a big idea. So anyway, that was another comment I had before I got into questions. My concern was revitalization plan also. And then, what was it? I think there's a lot in question in 6 and 7 that all par to what they had said as far as Parks and Recreation. When you're talking about Red Lodge Central Business District, the Parks and Recreation opportunities, do we need that one? We have just the one park, don't we? Maybe I'm not thinking. And then services provided by the city, are we talking about garbage here? You know, and then 7, like these are social issues, housing options. You know, I'm wondering if some of these are related, if they jive in the question. So are they related? Are they relevant? And then I guess my biggest question is, what do we really want to get out of this? Because I think our main thing is to improve the business climate in Red Lodge, what makes us different, you know. So trying to get the essence of the survey. But then what was the other, just one more thing. Number 9, what are the top issues, threats, and challenges? Well, how is government going to control whether there's building vacancies or retail variety, or you're getting into private businesses and private property rights? Like, yes, we don't want someone living right on Main Street that we have an issue with now, but lack of space of new businesses, homelessness. I'm wondering if it's just really relevant to that question. So that's it.
Okay, Jen?
Okay. All right, Cody, you ready for this? So I also had a similar concern about, like, you know, even in our agenda, we reference the downtown revitalization plan, but this references the downtown plan. I get your point that it's not 1986 anymore. Maybe we're not revitalizing our downtown. Mm-hmm. We don't need to call it that anymore, but I do think in this we need to reference that the last plan we had to help govern how the business district is improved upon in the coming years is now X number of years old, and this is the new, so that people understand when they get the survey why they're getting it now and what their answers are contributing to. So it's like, we're going to write a new plan. It's going to replace this thing that you kind of maybe know about, probably don't, and it will help guide. You know, that's the other thing. At the very end, it just says it's not a regulatory document, which we know, but I like the idea of saying that it serves as a guiding document that informs future decision-making and policies. And I feel like that last sentence isn't super clear about what it's used for. So if we could, like, sharpen that up, I think it would help. Are there going to be some instructions for filling it out? And I don't, just real basically, I know people know how to fill out radial, you know, click buttons, but for example, if I'm a household with 3 adults, do we fill out 3 forms, or is it one contribution per, you know, parcel of land you want? Like, how do I determine, is it just each individual adult gets to submit one that lives here? I think it would be good to put that in here so that people understand.
Okay.
I actually think the number of questions here is probably pretty on point. Like, you know, there's 15 or 16. I feel like that's a good number. I don't really see the need to condense, but I would reiterate what folks have already said about this, you know, when there's the ranking, and the ranking is more than 4. I feel like we to change that to be pick your top 3 or your top 5 or whatever would be easier and would help it get done in a reasonable amount of time. Number 4 is just worded funny. Like, you word it as I'm a business or a homeowner, but then the check boxes are other things. So I would just point that out that needs to be fixed. Let's see. I kind of liked, so for 5, you had here, like, what is your primary occupation? And one of the options is community volunteer. I feel like there are plenty of people who would check one of these other things, but also volunteer. So I'd kind of like to see if it's possible to have a secondary question that just says, do you volunteer in the community? Yes, no.
Oh, okay.
I think that would be, I also like that question as a data point, just like who's invested in the community in other ways. And I think that our businesses benefit from volunteerism in our town, and so I think that it's relevant to this particular data collection. Number 6, I feel like if we're going to talk about the downtown historic Red Lodge district, then one of these answers needs to say historic character, and I didn't see it on there. I feel like that's something
kind of weird. I swear that it
Yeah.
was. So that's
It
wasn't it last time? I wonder what happened.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't.
Sorry. Thanks for noticing.
I feel like that should be on there.
It should be on there.
Yeah, top 3. Number 8, I would just simply take out. How important is the success of downtown Red Lodge to you? I don't know anyone that would answer that as not so important or not important. Like people's idea of what success is and also how it influences how they live in this town. I would just remove that one because I don't think it's going to lend to any. It's not going to tell us anything,
Right.
really.
Yep.
So number 9, it seems like the majority of these are framed in terms of challenges. I know in the question it says issues, threats, or challenges. I would just say challenges, and then maybe word the rest of these to be challenges. So, for example, number 3, retail variety, I would put lack of retail variety.
Okay.
I do think I get your point, Marie, but I do think building vacancies is important here. You know, when you think about the revitalization plan, I mean, that was very much, we had a crumbling, we had a lot of vacancies downtown, and that plan was specifically meant to address business vacancies and to think creatively about how do we have a thriving downtown. So I would say that is a part of this process, and it makes sense to me to leave it there. Maybe park improvements could say needed park improvements or lack of cleanliness. I would just kind of sharpen up the language so that it's consistent. Number 10, nobody knows what historic overlay means except for us. So I don't know if you could just, delete that. I know in the beginning you talk about what the central business district is, like it's defining boundaries. Maybe just leave it that way. If you want to get it, the actual overlay, we'd have to explain what that means to people because they don't know what that means. 11, so I like this question, but I feel, it's not just walkable, it's like, what about
Like
bicycles?
Like
Is it better
multimodal.
ADA?
Yeah.
Is it connected? Like, do we have good sidewalks? Do we have reduced speeds? Like I would encourage some playing around with the language of that to kind of get at something else. So instead of just like extremely important, very important, maybe we could rephrase it to be what would encourage you to use pedestrian modes of transportation, like better sidewalks, ADA accessibility, connectivity, like something like that. I don't know. I don't know how anybody else feels about that one. I like the open-ended questions at the end. And I guess I'd just say I also understand that surveys are limited in their ability, but I appreciate this as a part of what we can do to encourage everyone to feel like they're participating and have an opportunity to contribute. And I saw that do well with the resort tax survey that we did. I think social media and the website. I think the city just invested in the TextMyGov text capabilities. We could send out a link via that to everybody who signed up for that. We could put a QR code on the water and the sewer bill, so people could just. So I think based on the responses we got for the short-term rental surveys, I think we could reach a good number of people with this survey, and I'm glad that we're doing it. Thanks.
Teresa?
Well, if we're limited to SurveyMonkey, there's no chance of a map, huh? No. Because I don't think people, in the opening sentence, it says, your downtown and central business district. Well, downtown is a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
So here's my thought.
the survey itself can include a map, but where you promote this, like on the website, I'd like to get some posters up, that includes the map. So there's a reference at least somewhere.
But then your data are skewed towards
Why?
people that had the map and clearly knew what they were answering to people that just kind of like conceptually answered it.
I'll have to think on that a little bit.
So maybe a better description if you can't put a map.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know, is it from the circle up to the Roosevelt Center, or is it from
Yeah.
7th or 8th to 14th, you know, on Broadway only?
That's what I thought.
It's written in that first paragraph.
Yeah, but she also says downtown, your downtown and central business district. So,
You're referring to both, kind of the same thing.
well, then
What's
get rid of
downtown,
one or
what's
the
central
other.
business, yeah.
You're talking about, because then you talk about it being an area as well. And so who
Okay.
knows where people are going to take that when they're answering,
Okay.
right?
And if we're going to call it the downtown plan, then let's just call it downtown.
Perfect. That's fine.
I mean, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and then the historic overlay, again, that's kind of confusing for people at the end. And then a group into fewer, I agreed with everything. I liked your comments, Marie, about what is it we're trying to lift here? What is it we're really trying to find out? And the choice of primary occupation. The Stillwater mine is not an occupation. Can you please just figure out what it is that's really being asked there? Are you in an industry worker or something else that's not to be misconstrued? I mean, but just to say Stillwater mine, that is not an occupation.
Right.
Tell that to a minor.
Well, if it said minor,
They're
then that would be different. Yeah.
They're a miner. They're not a Stillwater mine. So there's just a lot of things like that, you know, just to make it, you know, flow better and more consistent, not cause people to sit there and go, huh. Number 6, again, we did decide on a sliding bar and not a ranking. I don't know if we've come to terms. We've heard a couple different ideas about what to do there. But diversity, if you're from somewhere else, then diversity usually comes up in terms of people, or, you know, the makeup of the, you know, what are you seeing, what kinds of diversity as far as cultural items or, you know, things like that. What do you mean? Diversity of shops or diversity of appearances, or, you know, what is it you mean by diversity?
Okay.
And the mountain lifestyle, you know, it's, yeah, what does that mean with in relation to central business district? You might like the setting, because when you're looking up the street, you're looking at Mount Maurice. You might like the mountainous scenic setting, but you don't come, it's not something you would ask about the central business district. It's not a lifestyle. I don't know if, I don't know how anybody's going to answer to community, but I think we talked about it before, Red Lodge, the difference between a sense of community and a strong community, actually having a community, is what we're trying to express here, right? I mean, you can go anywhere and try to pick up a sense of community, but what is it, you know, you're trying to ask basically, do people understand this is a strong community, right? Or not. I don't know what you're trying to ask, but sense of community. Let's see. I had the same comment on number 10. They probably don't know where the overlay is. So again, if we can't provide a map, that's not going to be relevant.
Yeah.
I think if you're really only after their primary occupation, it might be interesting to know do you work multiple occupations?
Yes.
Because
I
that's
agree.
a lot of what goes on around
Yep.
here.
Yeah.
I agree.
Somehow.
What question was that, the occupation one?
That was number 5. Yeah, because that does, you know, that does impact downtown. and our condition.
Could you have it like multiple choice, like not just primary, but what is your
Yeah.
occupation, and just
Yeah.
mark all that apply?
Yeah.
I had another one where I thought, I
Right.
think it's the
There
one
you
you
go.
touched on, Jen, where it should be either like check all that apply and/or add that question about who also volunteer. Because
Yeah.
that does impact our downtown.
Yeah, that's an easy fix.
Yeah, okay. I think everything else has been said. Thank you.
Okay.
Except for
Yeah.
Jeff.
Well, I agree with what's been said previously, and I also agree with what Marie was saying in terms of really trying to hone in on what it is we're trying to what kind of information are we trying to get at that's going to actually guide a document in terms of articulating a vision and goals for the central business district. I think we need to kind of hone in a little bit more on that. And a question I had with number 6 is that really doesn't, those items that are listed there don't really apply to the central business district. They're more generic in terms of applying to the community as a whole. So unless we're looking at more broadly in terms of the growth policy and various other sections of the growth policy, I don't know that these items really apply. So I would say, if the question is to get at what do you like most about the central business district, then produce some questions or criteria that get a little bit more specific to that, such as the historic character of the buildings, is it walkability, is it the appearance of storefronts.
To add to that, there's nothing on there about the businesses.
What's interesting, I interpreted diversity as diversity
That's
of
what I mean,
businesses.
I thought.
But there's nothing referenced in the central business district. You're right.
So I think if just coming up with different categories that are much more focused in terms of what is the central business district, what's the activities that occur down there, and trying to get at that a little bit more. I think the other question I had was on 10, which actually gets at, maybe some of that could be incorporated into question 6, or it could be maybe a follow-up to question 6 rather than where it's located.
Yeah, agreed. I think we've covered that elsewhere. So.
But I think also you need to be a little bit more specific than historic character and try to elicit what does that mean. Is it the historic architecture of the buildings? Is that what we want to retain or maintain, or is that a desirable goal or vision for the downtown? That was a key element of the revitalization plan, is revitalizing the downtown to reflect the historic character of the buildings. That's a lot of the emphasis in that, and I think we need to bring that information forward, that we're not really starting from scratch. We're kind of building on that 86 document and bringing it up to date. Right. And I agree, revitalization is maybe not the right name for that, but something that's maybe more appropriate. But I think the body of what and the intent of the revitalization plan in terms of retaining the historic character of the downtown or central business district is something that we want to maintain or continue, I would assume. But so maybe kind of more emphasis on that. On question 11, how important is walkability, pedestrian? I agree, maybe get a little bit more specific about that. I think if that 11 as a general question, is walkability important? I don't have a problem with that, but a follow-up question is what can be improved, what can be done to improve the walkability, and that gets at the quality of the sidewalks, ADA accessible.
Bump outs.
What's that?
Bump outs. Right.
Yeah, bump outs would be another good piece to sort of see what people think about that. So.
Like, that's a good example, like, you're right, like, it's important that it's walkable, but does that really get the essence of what you're really asking?
Yeah.
Really it's to improve the walkability, like, just planning on all of it.
There's a little bit of a fine line here. I fully understand what you're saying. It is important, though, that we don't want to lead anybody anywhere. So you have to be a little bit cautious in providing examples, because that could be argued that you're just leading them into an answer. Which, if that's the road you want to go, nothing I can do about it, but but that's where the surveys get skewed, So you just want to be cautious of that, or cognizant of it, as we go through these, I guess. Yeah.
This may be a little off the wall, but just as an example that maybe we want to fiddle with or not, on item 9, for example, we've got this list of things, and we talked about different ways to approach it. Maybe picking a certain number, or maybe putting them in order like it said originally, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when we started talking about how do you determine whether this or that, and it's a value judgment, what if we had an optional question that said, if you had $1 million, how would you allocate it to the items on this page, for example, or to a general list of items? And that way you wouldn't be leading people in one particular direction, but you could tell by how they proportionally allocated how important it was to them for that versus that versus that.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking. I'll have to think on that a little bit. I don't want to make this super complex, but there might be a better way to ask it.
And if you had it to where you were calling it optional, well then people would just give up and throw it in the trash can before they got to it. If they were really interested in it, then they would go ahead and do it. And if they were tired of checking blocks, we'd probably have enough, but we wouldn't have them giving up on us.
Yeah.
Normally we wait until public comment period, but if there's something you want to add, I'll make it.
Like I said, you saw me, and so I was just going to, as I've listened to your feedbacks, kind of one of the things that I would look at, and I'll just use question 11 as an example, and I think this kind of builds off of what Deb's feedback was. As you're looking at questions, I would be looking at the next step. You guys know what you want to do, and look at that question and ask yourself, picture the feedback we're going to get from that question as it's written right now. What would we do differently based on the information of this feedback? And if the question doesn't dictate or change what you're going to do going forward, I would argue it's not a good question. And I know when we do, technical tests, we'll write it, we think it's brilliant, but the answer doesn't tell us anything. I actually loved your, if it was $1 million, where would you allocate it as an open-ended? Because that's going to give you information that you can then say, I know how we would use that information as we approach our plan. But that to me would be, as you go through each of these questions, there was several of them that was the answer. It's like, okay, let's project ourselves in the future. We've got the answers. Is there anything we can do with that? And if the answer is no, it doesn't, if the output of the question as it's written isn't going to guide you and direct you, you're not making it shorter and easier and getting useful information. Thank you, Jeff.
I had a really small one, Jeff.
Well, it's good.
As everybody said, that when you have a whole long list and you're trying to put them in order, we know how hard it is to say, which one's number one and number two? It's really hard. What if you just simplified it and said, please check those that apply?
Do we need a 1 to 10?
Make it a lot
Yeah,
quicker.
just check all that apply.
Check all that you're concerned with, or that,
But then you don't know which is the greatest concern. Which is the good
Public stuff.
Hey, Chelsea.
So public hearing.
What's
I feel like if we're gonna,
I think it's pertinent. I would
is it okay to go off course?
because we're on this subject, I know what's going off this schedule.
Should.
Just a little note that I have on occupations. I like the idea of being able to select more than one because I think that's really common within our community across the board. One I think that I would like to see broken apart would be arts and entertainment and recreation services. Those two don't, I get it, they're entertainment value, but very different in scale and a very different kind of denominator there. Food and accommodation, same kind of deal, like you have your service industry, but food and hospitality, though they do coincide, again, very different in how they do so and how they operate. Like I wouldn't necessarily consider like a housekeeper and like a waitress, like one person's making tips, one person's not, like if that makes any sense there. And one thing I found really interesting that wasn't included, education. There's no education, like teachers on here.
That's the central business district.
Yeah, I brought that up, but, yeah.
Oh, sorry,
but
I didn't hear that, but yeah.
It
Part of
doesn't
the-
really
part of the
apply
period,
to the
exactly.
central business district.
Yeah. Only other thing again, I think there's some work that's getting done. I like where your head's at with it. Again, if you don't get to do the value scale, if nothing else, maybe just for the additional comments before that, like what would you do to improve your central district? And then you can get direct ideas from people in the community. And if you see some of those align, that can give you a really good idea of what to move forward on. And then for number 7, that was what would you do to improve about the downtown, or what would you improve about downtown district? I think parking and safety might be something important to add to that variable.
Parking
It
is
kind of goes
huge.
with infrastructure, but
Since I opened it up, anybody else want to? I broke protocol.
On number 6, I noticed that we didn't have what you like most about downtown. You haven't got retail, bars, restaurants, personal services. There's a lot of things. Bank, there's a hotel.
Yeah, there's nothing business related.
Yeah, we need to look at what's downtown and then refer to that. There's kids' dance classes downtown, so.
Where quality of life and safe community are on, that issue's on Hagen too. That's like a general.
Yeah, and that's not going to give us what we need.
performances, entertainment, nightlife.
And I'll just write down some stuff and email it.
Perfect.
There you
So
go.
some fool opened it up.
That's why we love you, Dave.
Into getting to getting the people to do the answers, I had 2 thoughts. Some of it was kind of talked about the downstairs, like the first paragraph in your introduction. I would get rid of the within the city, if you are unfamiliar with zoning, the central. I would just say, for the future of your downtown located in the general area located between blah, blah, blah. And I think somebody mentioned actual landmarks, which I thought was good. The second paragraph, the downtown plan is a base. Does that really matter as far as survey feedback, or can we shorten it and keep people with us a little longer? And then, do you consider changing the order of the questions and putting your meatier questions up? Your first 6 questions are demographics, so now you've tired me out and all you captured is demographics and you haven't gotten any feedback.
Put those at
You
the end.
reverse the
Put those at the
first
end.
6 and put those at the end.
Okay.
I thought, I wrote the same thing down.
Demographics at the
We
end.
have a lot of demographics on here.
And really, to me, it doesn't matter what age you are if you're a participating citizen that's buying and selling downtown.
Yeah, but you have to understand, like what Cody was saying
No,
is
she needs
for
to
the
have it,
grant,
yeah.
we need to know that the answers that we got represent a breadth of the population that lives here. And the only way you're going to do that is to re-ask the demographic information.
And that goes back to there's 2 check boxes. We have to do something for the state. And then the second one is, does the feedback get you closer to designing the document?
Well, I will say I wouldn't want to make decisions on the survey answers if I didn't see that a that a wide variety of the humans who live here responded to it. Like if it was just, you know, people between the ages of 18 and 24 that filled it out, then I'm not going to want to base a lot of my, you know, I wouldn't want to give a lot of validity to the responses. I'd want a variety of answers. Right.
Is there, with the grant, is there something that limits it from 8th to 15th? Because north of 8th, we have quite a bit of business. It's not maybe the central business district, but we have a lot of business north of 8th.
Yeah.
We also have the Roosevelt Center south of 15th, I believe. So I was just curious what the...
I don't think it's necessarily limiting. That's where their focus is, but I think there's a way within the document itself to explain that we pulled this way because of this. So
How would you think to define it? Teresa?
That was a question I was going to bring up too, is, you know, what's the scope? Our growth policy makes some distinctions. You know, basically it's defined as a central business district. And then we have the community entrances.
yeah.
So, and that gets to your point, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the focus of this exercise is really to deal with the central business district as defined by the growth policy, and that we won't, we aren't going to be going into the other 16 or 16 sections of the growth policy.
Right. Yeah, and yes, you are correct. And remember too, though, I mean, part of your growth policy update will be looking at a future land use map, because your current one doesn't include one. It's a zoning map of what you have now. And that is a requirement that you contemplate what could be different and where could we make adjustments, knowing that likely some of these community entrance districts could expand or become something a little bit different. So it's a little bit of a gray area there, but yes, you are correct that to align those documents, it really needs, and that's why we kind of lent it that way. I think we can make the argument to include more, but
I understand.
yeah.
Apples to apples.
You do.
What's that?
We need apples to
It
apples.
could be the gas station.
Yeah.
Understand.
Yeah, well, we definitely need to define the scope and set the boundaries, because if we start delving into the community entrances, say,
Right.
then that opens up a whole nother series of questions, and not necessarily bad, but it
Right.
increases the complexity of
It
what
does.
we're doing, and we'll, I think, at that point, we're really going to need to think about how we're going to, that's going to make this survey a lot more, because now you're going to have a whole new
Right.
section that deals with community entrances and how do people feel about that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, Cody, that's a question. I mean, we kind of talked about this last time. The last time we looked at this and was trying to narrow things down, and we said, okay, this survey needs to be specific to like a downtown plan, but we also, if the intent is to also redo our growth policy, then this body will want to ask questions of the community that are more broadly and separate. And have you thought about, you know, the idea, you know, you opened by saying we don't want to over-survey the community, so have you thought about like how we would engage the public twice onto similar but separate?
So that was kind of my original plan. I mean, if you recall back, was we run one survey that doesn't necessarily define, there's just specific questions. And then it got to be pretty complex. So we split them out.
Confusing, yeah.
So, I think it's going to be more of a timing issue. I think there is going to need to be some way of pulling. I don't have the answer yet.
Okay.
Couldn't this downtown plan be referred to and part of the growth policy?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But I think there's going to be some more information to capture from the community as a whole.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
And just for reference, last iteration, this document was, 45 questions or something, and it had a variety such that it's confusing as a reader to go, oh, now we're talking about downtown specifically, and oh, now we're talking about the general character of the community, and we just wanted to make sure that people were focused. If we wanted to answer questions about downtown, that they were focused on that throughout the entirety of the survey.
Yeah.
But I do think if we're going to have growth policy updates, then we're going to want to ask other questions.
Yeah.
The other thing we talked about as far as publicity around the survey was to have the public meeting first and then hand out so that the people get an understanding of what the purpose of the survey is and where we're going with the update to the downtown plan.
So I've been talking with a couple stakeholders, a couple business owners and things like that, and Al. But I think the ideal at this point would be to run the survey and for a month. I mean, let's give it a good month. And within that month, let's do an open house as well, where you can engage and direct to the survey, but also how I've historically done this, and we don't always have to do it the way I've done it, because that's not always the answer, but had some success in hosting kind of an open house with basically poster boards of exactly what you're asking on your survey. So you're engaging a little bit differently. I've had a really good response that way. And you're having conversations, which generally that's where you get the best feedback, in all honesty. So that's kind of what my target is.
With the open house, are you thinking about having people break out in groups or in tabletops and going through a series of questions, or do you have any thoughts on what the format might be?
Yeah, it can be whatever you want. I'll always use that disclaimer because it is yours. But how I have done it is typically an opening remarks. Let's break down really what we're after here, answering those questions. And then, hey, we've got these areas that we'd love to talk to you about, what your thoughts are. Mingle, that type of deal. It's a little bit casual, but it can look however you'd like it to. So.
Okay. Have you thought
I've even hosted them in like street fairs. So I'll just tell you that. Like, there's many methods.
Have we talked about a date yet?
Not yet. I'm hoping October. That's my goal.
There's October 7th. Are you thinking a weekday or Saturday or what?
Whatever you guys think. I mean,
I don't think you're ready yet.
October 7th would be pretty quick.
Well, the only reason I mentioned that is that there's already a public forum being planned to deal with aging in place with community foundation. So that would be a conflict.
No, I would love to do an open house more towards maybe
How about
third week.
Halloween, when we have 300 kids and their parents in the downtown area for 2 hours?
It's not a bad idea to host one when you've got an event already happening.
Yeah.
So, and
get some
none
really
of you have
cool
to park there. I'm happy to park there, but someone else has to watch my toddler then, though. So, I'll
Take your toddler around.
trick or treating.
I'd have them.
But yeah, those are options.
Speak up,
I was
Chels.
going to say, just a thought, maybe multiple open houses, multiple different venues, something that will capture different audiences, because I could see one, kind of what you were talking about, with, it is a little bit more seated, a little bit more, like, let's talk out these issues, but I could also see a very mingly, like, open house at one of the establishments in town where people just can casually come in and chat about it.
Yeah.
I love the idea of having the ones with the families and the Halloween, like having it right there in Pride Park. People come and get their candy, and it's like, hey, fill out this survey while your kid's getting Halloween pictures or whatever. I think that would be a really great way to capture multiple audiences, and instead of just sticking with one idea. And also, it opens up additional time frames, because obviously, scheduling anything in Red Lodge, there will always be one conflict or another. So it's a nice way to keep as many people involved and associated as possible.
What about the candidate forum?
I don't know. I think it's nicer to do these things in a really pleasant space.
Yeah.
Well, it's not something about a candidate.
That's the right way to say
There's a lot of
that.
mingling prior to it starting,
Yeah.
and so there's a whole
It's not
separate
political.
room, and you
I
can
guess-
have all your boards up.
Cody, you could probably treat some of these suggestions as like, we had talked about you
brainstorming.
engaging with
Yeah.
specific groups
Yeah.
in general,
Yeah.
and that could be, maybe it's not the survey per se, like, I like
Yeah.
the idea of an open house for the survey, but just, getting
Yep.
feedback in those
Yeah, it's
spaces.
just outreach, yep.
Have you met with any groups in town yet?
Yeah, the Business Alliance on Monday this week.
Poor girl.
I don't know why I keep saying that.
You were there.
You clearly don't know what my daughter's
It was there.
Yeah, it was.
I think you got different feedback from a different group.
Yeah, that's my job. You guys, please don't ever worry about that. I wouldn't keep coming back if I didn't enjoy you. It's not that you guys aren't that bad. There are some places I don't prefer to work. This isn't one of them. Yeah, and then I've talked with the chamber as well, but we're kind of dovetailing that with the Business Alliance. So
How about the community Red Lodge?
Community Foundation?
Not the forum, but
Community Foundation?
what?
RLICA?
I have not engaged with them yet. No.
And BTRA also might be another one in terms
Yeah,
of
I have
dealing
all of them on my list, but I haven't. I'm starting here. So
with. Okay. All right, did you get everything?
I think so. Yeah. So you guys, I'll try to target to get you the next as close to final draft as we can. At some point, we have to call it. I hate to tell you, but
What's your target date for getting a final draft?
I'd like to get it to your next meeting and let's make the decision and go. So, okay.
I guess one other suggestion maybe as a lead-in or just background information on the survey is maybe just to bring forward what some of the goals and visions were in for the community central business district out of the growth policy and also the revitalization plan, just to bring that information forward in terms of what has been guiding the community to date in terms of how the central business district is treated within the growth policy as well as within zoning and
Okay. Yeah.
and where this historic character comes from. That's basically
Right.
comes from the 86 plan. So, all right.
Okay. Thank you guys.
Anybody got anything else? We'll move on. So next on the agenda is to look at the allowable use tables for STRs. The committee has met a couple of times, and did Courtney say anything in terms of how we want to go with this, or?
No, she said she didn't expect much action on this. Sorry, I can't see you, so I keep trying to get myself going. Short girl problem.
So
She just mentioned there were some slight revisions, so.
yeah, can you bring it up?
Yeah.
I was thinking that, are we at a point where we want to present, I think just make sure we're all on the same page for the STR section, so that can be included in the packet that goes along with that ordinance draft?
Yeah, I was just going to review what the committee has come up with at our last meeting, and then the definitions of the allowable use for category or accessory use, I should say, not allowable. That we discussed, and you can
Is
bring
this what
that
you're
up.
looking for, or the actual tables?
Well, let's go through this
Keep going.
first
Go through this,
because
okay.
because this is going to relate to the categories in the allowable use table. So,
Then I can look for the others on the drive.
so as a little bit of background, I think when we first started on this, we had a number of the zones where STRs would be a conditional use, or we had talked about that and made any decisions about that. And in the interim, Courtney has kind of came up with this idea of an accessory use. So one of the concerns with making conditional use would be the workload put on the planning department as well as the planning board if we had to review all the STRs as a conditional use. So what she came up with as an alternative was this idea of an accessory use, and how that is defined is it's single units permitted in all zoning districts, only permitted as an accessory use where A is listed in the table, and that's what we'll get to later. An accessory use is defined as an unoccupied second home that is available to be rented out for no more than 180 days in a calendar year, or only part of the home is rented out if it's a first floor or of a two-story home, for example. In the central business district, an accessory use is only permitted in the upper level of structures in the historic overlay. STR as a principal use would be defined as an entire home is available to be rented out greater than 180 days in a calendar year, and is the entire purpose of the structure. And I think the other rationale, and you can correct me if I get this wrong, Teresa, is to provide a mechanism or the ability of a number of second homeowners to be able to rent out their home as a short-term rental for part of the year. That's where the 180 days kind of comes in. The other aspect of the 180 days is if you're less than 180 days, you're not really a permanent resident or of Red Lodge. More than 180 days, you are.
I thought it was 180 days not rented,
What's
but
that?
advertised. We talked about 180 days rented versus 180 days advertised.
We said available.
Available is the same thing as advertised. But there is apparently no way that the software that we currently have can tell you how many days it's rented. So instead, the concept was to restrict your advertising your short-term rental to 180 days, regardless of how much of that time it's really rented.
I don't believe we came up with the implementation, the method for implementing it.
No, we did not.
So we don't know.
So we don't. So this could be something that we can't actually.
It could be something that we can. So we don't know.
Oh, Courtney was going to check into that and see what the capabilities of the software are in terms of tracking that.
I have some questions about the wording in this. And I know it's not meant to apply to everything in the world, but the accessory dwelling units, when we first started talking about it a long time ago, we were thinking of them not necessarily or even primarily as you create an accessory dwelling unit so you can have something to rent as a short-term rental. But it incorporated, when we're talking about it at that level, it would be a way to increase the housing stock. So maybe it could be a short-term rental, but maybe it could be a guest house, or like the basement apartments are used in a lot of places, where somebody could have it as a long-term rental that happened to be a smaller, more affordable house on a lot that was already had a house on it that was being used for full-time year-round rental, and you could have It would just add to the housing stock. Part of it could be an STR or not. And one of the things that I found attractive of that at that point in time, it's not necessarily restricting it to keep it from being, but you have a whole lot of people in town, and I will admit to being one of them, that are getting older and older and older, who think, gosh, wouldn't it be great to have a tiny home in my backyard so that when I can't fully take care of myself, there'll be somebody right here that would get suspicious if they didn't see me every day. And that's sort of something, since the baby boomers are all getting to this age, that is a wave of the future. I could see it happening around here, and especially since they've gotten rid of our nursing home, and it's the assisted living places are getting hard to find. So I'm not necessarily concerned with what this says, but what it doesn't incorporate.
It does make it more flexible. It gives you more flexibility in how you want to use that accessory, the use, ADU.
I think what you're referring to, Susan, is actually in the allowed use tables, the very first line is just ADU period is allowed in all, or is listed as accessory in all zones.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just talking about if you want to use your ADU as an STR, these are the limitations.
That's
on
what I
this.
think needs to be clarified on here, because I didn't go into nervous conniptions about this until I saw this one. I was fine with this one.
I mean, it does say STRs as related to principal and accessory use. I agree that it is a little confusing, but I think Courtney did try to be specific. STRs as accessory use, STRs as principal use.
Or
versus just saying accessory use, right?
Well, yeah, but we could have it more specified that, okay, you have this, and you have this, and you have this. So you have something, I mean, you can have it and rent it out without it if it's your house and in your yard. You can still have it and rent it out. If you decide you want to go STR, go ahead and get your permit and go that way. But if you decide you want to do long-term rental, or if you want to get somebody all the way through the season in the summer and not limit them to 30 days at a time and then find someplace else to live, you could do that too. Just as long as it's at least as clear as this is, so that we don't take it and have our, so people like me won't get discombobulated by it.
This ADU guest house is an accessory dwelling unit,
Mhm.
right? And when we use the A down below, we're meaning that there's a property that has an accessory use of
Yeah.
an STR.
And
So-
I'm okay with how it looks on here, but it's
Yeah.
on here, which we might wind up not using as part of a formal document
This is
at
really
all.
just to help us as we continue discussions.
Mhm.
Courtney's been tracking this for us because we're trying to build that definition. It is confusing, I know. We've met several times.
So I think what I'm hearing you say, Sue, is that we need to clarify how ADUs are handled as an accessory use.
That'd be okay.
That
How many options
Make
there are
that
for
clear
an ADU.
too. In addition to what's on here, add that clarification,
Mhm.
right? Okay, got it.
I mean, the other way it would be handled, the way this is structured, is if somebody has an ADU and they want to use it as an STR, then it's treated as a principal use.
Mhm.
Does anybody else have any thoughts or comments on where we're going with this?
Oh, I got a few, Jeff, but I'll leave.
Well, we'll wait until public comment period. Okay, so why don't you bring up the table?
I will try.
Is this the right click open as from the meeting the other day?
Yeah.
And that was Kobe from the chamber.
Just don't do like the kids do, they just click away and it don't read.
Yeah, that's how you know how old I am. What's our most current?
Let's see.
Do you have any idea which one?
She sent it to us and it was called,
It's a spreadsheet if
That's
that.
what I thought, yeah.
no, 320 would be it.
Allowed uses
Yeah, they have the date.
and dimensional standards.
It's 422? No,
No.
no. Let me see if what she called it in the email.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, you guys.
Look at the dates over on the right column and see if you see one for September 13th.
You know, these all look older to me.
Yeah, they do look all when it was
What do you see? There we go.
Yeah,
913.
913.3, that's the one. Yep.
No.
Third section down.
And then if you scroll down to lodging,
Okay.
There it is.
that's,
You're only going to get it in parts, apparently.
all right. So under the categories, we've got short-term rental 1 unit, short-term rental 2 units, and short-term rental 3 to 5 units. Going across for each of the zones, for R1, which is low-density residential, short-term rental is an accessory unit use, and it is also a principal use. And then same with R2. And then in R3, it's an accessory use and for 1 unit, and also an accessory use for 2 units. In R3, there three and more units are not allowed in R3, so that's why that's blank. It doesn't apply. In R4, short-term rental is an allowable use in a 1 unit and 2 unit, and conditional in more than in 3 to 5 units. And the reason for that is that in R4, those larger units have to go through a conditional use review. And then in C1, which is the community transition zone, it would be an allowable use and a principal use for 1 unit.
Is that
When you say allowable, or is that accessory?
Accessory, accessory.
We're not clear on that.
Accessory use, excuse me. Yeah. And then conditional use for a 2 unit, and conditional use for 3 or more units. And then in C2, which is it's kind of northeast part of town that's mixed use, mixed commercial and residential, it would be accessory use and permitted use. and then conditional use for 2 units, conditional use for 3 to 5 units, and then in the community entrance zone north, it would be accessory use for single unit and conditional use for 2 units and for 3 to 5 units or more. And then in the community entrance south, again, accessory use for a single unit, permitted use for 2 units, and accessory use and conditional use for 3 or more units. And then in the C4, which is the central business district, it would be an accessory use for 1 unit, accessory use for 2 units, accessory use and conditional use for 3 to 5 units. So that's what we've kind of can't come up with so far. So any thoughts or questions or comments?
Can the committee members just describe the philosophy around short-term rental 1 unit, what when it's allowed principally? So in R1, R2, C1, C2 are the 4 zones where it's allowed principally. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy of why you selected those areas and not others for 1 unit STRs?
I don't know if I can without Courtney here.
It was also, wasn't it because it's the idea that you could have a unit within a single property that is allowed accessory use, like a floor or a room or something that could be a short-term rental versus the whole property. The whole property would be, but we also wanted to make sure that everybody understood that it was a permitted principal use as well. So again, it's adding more flexibility, and it's only 1 unit, so it's
right.
No harm, no foul.
I guess what I was trying to get at actually is the reverse, not where I see that you've got it as accessory throughout. I guess what I'm curious about is why only. So I understand R3 and R4 wouldn't have principal because R3 and R4 are trying to promote multi-units on a, so a 1 unit STR doesn't make sense in those 2 categories. I'm curious what if there's a similar philosophy regarding the entrances and they're not listed as principal uses as in the entrances and in the central business. I think I understand why, but if you could
Well, we were looking specifically at the urban renewal district and making sure that was accessory use allowed, but not principal, because we want to promote more longer-term housing as well as other, other development. Right. So
thank you. That's what
it would be accessory. We would limit that, not make it a principal.
Got it.
That's why the asterisk is there too, that Courtney was going to develop some wording to carve out the urban renewal district in terms of what some of the expectations are relative to STRs within that district.
And then as far as the, you're asking about, it made sense to you, R3, R4, and that's the brunt of it, that's what we have in our densest neighborhoods, right? So accessory makes sense, but principal, and if you were to allow more principal use among the
multi-units.
Yeah, the C3, any of those outlying areas, right? You're consuming space that would be otherwise available for those other mixed purposes and limiting them.
I guess I'm just noticing that for 2 unit and 3 to 5 unit, there's only 1 area which is in the south where 2 units would be a principal use option. 2 units and 3 to 5 units is not listed as a principal use in any other district. And I just wanted to make sure that was intentional.
Well, I think that the reason why it's conditional use with the 3 to 5 units is because it's a conditional use anyway. If somebody were to propose a 3 or more unit,
for anything. You're right. Okay.
It's more impactful, so you
They-
want to
they
have it
come-
go through conditional use.
and they have to go through conditional use
Okay.
review anyway, so that's why that's there.
Jeff, I kept thinking about this A/P accessory principal. Wouldn't P be fine?
No.
Why have to have both? Because if it's a principal use, it could be the ADU or it could be the main house.
An ADU is defined as not principal.
Principal is the whole property, everything.
Everything on the piece of land. So,
By definition, an ADU is not principal use.
no,
Yeah.
I understand
Okay.
that. But an ADU would be an accessory use. But if it's a P use,
That's
then
everything.
you could use either one.
Well, yeah, so
So we don't need the A.
we
No.
went through this before.
We do need both.
We do.
We do need both,
Okay.
Sandy, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We do.
it's just kind of,
And so for 2 units in C3 South, it makes sense that it's a P there and not in North, and that's specifically because the URD is in the North.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Are we gonna do an overlay?
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean, I'm looking at these asterisks and,
The URD, we need.
yeah, we need an overlay.
Because we keep going, where is that? You know, we need the overlay.
Yeah. Courtney talked about doing that as an overlay.
That would help simplify it, I think.
because I think the URD also is outside the C3 North. Isn't it also some R4?
It is a
We
little
saw a
bit
little piece of
Also
that.
historic overlay.
Well, I don't know that it goes into R.
Absolutely is, because I'm in it, and also historic overlay.
Does it go into R4? It goes into C2. I know the URD includes some of C2.
And then Chelsea says it's also part of the historic overlay.
Yeah, the urban renewal district goes up the hill to Alpine Basin, which portion of that is absolutely part of the historic overlay.
But I guess to move us along, I get Courtney's point here, which is in terms of getting us to agree on what the short-term rental situation should look like, so that in a company this, it would be important to denote that,
We have to, right, we have to have this clear
yeah,
before that ordinance
right.
recommendation.
Yeah, I will admit I've been confused about the AP all along. I haven't gotten a good,
It could
clear
be-
explanation
it could be-
so that I understand it myself, or that I can explain it. So,
That is
We
something
just-
that
we
came through
just-
legislation this year, that they're trying to clean up those definitions, but they are very much separate.
yeah. Do you have any thoughts, or Cody, or in terms of where we're headed or going with this?
Yeah. I do not.
Is this something maybe we should hold off to Courtney this year?
Yeah, I don't think she was expecting any action necessarily.
Right.
I think in anticipation that maybe something wild happened and you were like, we're ready, she brought that resolution, but I don't think that's the expectation, so.
I remember we discussed having, a hope of getting this through in the next couple of meetings so that, it would be nice to forward the changes to the regulations to council and have those 2 hearings before there's a complete, not complete, but a turnover again. We start back at square one.
I like square one.
I just don't want us to act so quickly that we get it wrong and we have to fix it.
If we don't understand the legislation,
We're already in trouble. I can't explain an AP zone, it's like, no, I don't know the answer to that one.
I just did a quick check while you guys were chatting with the new legislation. That some of it is already retroactive, but most of it on zoning and ADUs begins on January 1st. And it appears, as presented, you're compliant that way. So just FYI. You're good that way. Yes.
I mean,
we felt comfortable, I think, with ADUs. It was the problem of having something in that R1 through R3 where there's one house, whether or not it can be used as a short-term rental.
And adding the accessory use gives them more flexibility. So you're either going to enter into an STR market by having an accessory or principal.
Well, principal gets you in either way.
No,
no,
principal.
It is important to delineate between both of these on here.
There's one house.
If there's one house, then it's principal. If it's used
Exactly.
as an STR.
It's not AP.
But what she's saying is, if you have a one-unit residence and you want to build if you want to build an ADU on the property,
Not an ADU.
No.
No.
Not an
Accessory
ADU.
use.
ADUs are allowed everywhere.
By right. Yeah.
The
okay,
use of the ADU.
STR. How do you want to build an STR on the property? Or if you want to use it as an STR.
if you want to use an ADU and use it as an STR, you can do that, and that's why both of these are here.
Can you, where are the 180 minutes coming in?
That's later.
Oh.
And I also think we should just not go there until we hear
I
back
think
from
that was
Monica
the
about whether or
proposal.
not this is.
That probably
Let's see how they would
Yeah.
gain that information from the system
Right.
before we
Yeah, I
go.
wouldn't recommend really studying anything on that. So you can or
And
can't.
that's exactly what this note says, is
Yes.
this is all pending, what is the implementation of it? Pending.
I would say it would be nice to ask Courtney. I'm looking at the urban renewal districts, the overlay, the work's been done, it exists. So I just wonder if we can get a copy of that for the next meeting with a description of each. We know most of it is C3N, but it is the case that there are other little sections here that are included, and it would be nice to be able to reference that the next time we look at these.
So anybody else have any comments on the table or where we're at or where we need to go? If not, committee's going to meet again next week, and then the other things we're looking at relative to this table is looking at the other sections and trying to consolidate some of these categories, and we were looking at some models that are used by Helena and Bozeman in terms of how they have structured their allowable use table and the categories that they've used, and we'll be taking a look at those between now and our next meeting, and seeing if there's some ways we can consolidate or simplify this table. And so, I guess there's no other comments. Under new business, the resolution 2301 amended is referring to this.
It is, because it would be to recommend the changes that would come of this discussion into your zoning.
That's what we did on outdoor advertising. Right?
Yeah.
This one's outdoor.
No, but it's similar to what she's saying. Yeah.
It'd be included
It'd be included in it too. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think until you've wrapped up this.
Right. It's not going anywhere.
All right.
Wishful thinking.
All right, then I guess we'll move on to written correspondence. Anything? Do you have anything more, Courtney?
Courtney.
Cody.
You know people do that to us all the time. I do not. No.
And then open it up for anything to the public in terms of any communications from the audience. And
Sandy Conley, 307 Hagen Avenue South. I'm going to go through a quick history of what's going on with short-term rentals. The zoning was changed in April of last year, making sure that short-term rentals were safe and they have permits. Last month, the City Council further restricted people's property rights by limiting the number of short-term rentals. Now, this board is talking about further restricting short-term rentals in different zones, permitted accessory conditional. Enough is enough. How much is enough? We're taking away property rights of people in our community. Why? Why? We've already got limits on it. Isn't that enough? Now you want to zone them out. This idea of 180 days was Courtney's idea, and she clearly said advertised. She did not say rented, because they don't have it. She says that she'd have to take the resort tax and back that out to find out how many days it was rented. But she's talking about advertised. This is ridiculous. This has gone way too far. That's mine. If you insist on requiring a conditional use permit, you need explicit criteria for approving or disapproving a conditional use permit. And you need that first, not second. So the conditional use permit needs to be why, under what conditions are you going to deny it? Under what conditions, what are you going to look at to approve it? And that needs to be done before you call it a conditional use permit. That's my whole thing. It's just, this has gone too far. This is a resort town. We are dependent on tourism. You have families, which we love. Families are better than independent people because they do want a house. And this city has attacked them in the last 2 years. This is crazy. Another statement is, it came up last night, Teresa's Observatory is in the P1 district, which is public. And what happened with that is we need to fix the zoning in the P1 so that any building being built on public land needs to come in front of this board. I mean, that's the bottom line. This particular one went from a resolution approving an observatory, which was no worries, but it did say that the concrete pad not to exceed 20 by 20. And the concrete pad, the impermeable surface up there, is 30 by 36. The building itself never went through this board. The building itself was presented to the Parks Board, but not approved in the final stages. It went right into the building department. So the planning board needs to fix the P1 zone or all the P zones so that any building on public land needs to be vetted thoroughly, especially a building that has electricity with movable parts that within 30 days, according to this MOU, in 30 days it could be terminated. And guess who gets it? The city. So I just think that we need to seriously look at the P1 through P3, 4, whatever. Any of the public lands needs to have a building approved by this group.
Jen Kapp, 8 North Platte, and I would have to echo what Sandy said about now we have an ordinance that has set a threshold or cap or limit, whatever you want to call it, on STRs, yet the planning board is now addressing, as I had previously warned the city council, so to speak, that a company like mine, if it's constricted by a cap, and I do feel that was somewhat addressed in the ordinance. And as a company, we have said we will be a good steward of the ordinance, but yet now I feel STRs are being headhunted from the allowed use tables. And I do agree with Sandy that enough is enough. I mean, if we're at 10% and the city council agreed that the cap will be enacted at 20%, then that will hold us healthy. That's what the city council announced when they voted in favor of that ordinance. So for the planning board to then come in from another direction and attempt to control STRs through allowed use tables, I think that is a headhunt on an industry. And I have said this before to this board, that it could seriously impact our company. Now, on another, so what I've heard tonight, and I agree, I've been absent for a few meetings, I'll be sure to be present, is that the idea of 180 nights came from Courtney. That's been discussed tonight. It's part of the record, apparently, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. Now, I appreciate all Courtney does as a city staff, and she's great at her job. I'm not arguing that. But I participate in our democracy here in this municipality, and I vote for my council. I have applied to be on planning board and was not chosen. And if the ideas for what will eventually become a resolution or an ordinance come from a city staff, I feel that's not the line of the chain of command. I mean, if a planning board member wants to present an idea, and that idea is vetted by the planning board and voted by the planning board, and then kicked up the line to the council, I understand that process. But for me as a citizen or a self-employed person to say, here's my idea for 180 nights, I would like you guys to discuss it and vote on it. I don't think that is proper protocol, and I object to that. If I'm understanding it right, and if I'm wrong, I will hang back after the meeting, and people can come to me and explain if I've misunderstood where that 180 nights restriction came from. Thank you.
My turn. Oh, sorry, I'm a little wimpy. I put two. C2 bin 803 North Hauser, Historic District, and as well as Urban Renewal District, R2. This is going to come off real scrambled because I'm trying to absorb a lot. As Jen said, I have missed a few meetings. You obviously know it because you haven't heard from me in a while. That being said, I'll get to that one later. Sorry, again, real scrambled. So, kind of going through the zoning, I have a couple of curiosities. Where can you have, God, even my notes are bad. Is there an option for owners to appeal the decision? Is there an option for any of the people in this town to vote on this? Probably not, no. They have this option to come sit here, but we have empty chairs because many people don't know what's going on. Many people don't understand how this is going to affect their property rights, affect their home values, affect their community around them. Also, in this scenario with the accessory and the ADU, does the owner get to choose which of these units is the principal and the ADU? Because I think of a lot of folks who are downsizing because they're older, a lot of their family is out of the house. They want to now rent this big house up in the front, stay in their ADU, and then when their family comes back to visit, they have a home that they can stay in. So to me, I don't feel like that's necessarily fair to force people to build an ADU, because that's the other piece here. I don't think you understand a lot of these homeowners that own short-term rentals, they're on budgets. They're trying to make this work. They're trying to invest in this community for their long-term goals. And to assume that they can go through and pay the impact fees to get an ADU built in the back of their property, just like, oh yeah, no, I'll just build one because I want it. Like, that's how that works. I have to buy my house, and then I have to build my house to make it equitable, maybe for me to have this house down the line. I think that's really unacceptable. Frankly, also, I'd really be curious what the percentages of homes in the area that are R1 and R2 versus R3, R4, because as she's mentioned, you're already cutting back, the community's already cutting back to 20%, which is fine. You put this cap on, you got your restrictions, great. Why do it more? Why do we need more restrictions when we've already said that is what we need? Allow people to do what they want to do with their properties while providing safe and good instruction and good stewardship to how they can do so and be successful at it and make sure that they are not causing negative impacts to the community. We already have zoning regulations to make sure we have safe homes, to make sure that we're getting regulations, we're getting inspections, we're going through the processes, we're paying our money, we're doing all of these steps to make sure that we provide this safe option, and it's just not enough for you guys? Come on! Like, I am just so fed up with having to come here and fight this conversation every damn time, and frankly, it's for nothing. It's for what? Tell me what it's for. Also, again, a little heated, a little overwhelmed. I'm also wondering, is the planning board intending to force a correction on our housing market? Is that what the goal is? Because the housing market went up so high, now you want to bring house values down? Because that's what's going to happen. And great, you're making more affordable housing for workforce. Well, the interest rates are through the roof. Stellar. Just what we need. But it's not your place to force a market correction. Okay.
Dave Weston, 1471 Kane Circle. And this is going to be a really significant shift from the previous comments. So I hope, and please don't take this as downplaying any of the other comments, but I wanted to make a different comment, and it's specifically to you, Jeff, and that's thank you. I appreciate, and like I said, I hope I didn't disrupt things. My recollection of, a lot of times on an issue by issue, kind of at the end, you go around the table, and then there was an audience, and that's why I raised my hand and put it down and leave that choice to you. I think managing a meeting that is occupied by a couple people who used to be on planning board is a tricky thing, and I think you handled it well, and I appreciate it. And in the future, like I said, if I raise my hand and you choose not to, that's fine and that's okay. I liked when you said any comments from the table because it helped remind all of us it's not you. If I decide we're going to ask for public input, we'll ask for public input. And I can't speak for everybody else, but I will do my part to respect your protocol and support that. I appreciate you taking our input tonight, but I also thank you for doing a stellar job. And I'll throw in, thank you for doing a stellar job. And whoever nominated that guy must have been brilliant, because it was an excellent choice of somebody to run these meetings. So thank you.
Thanks, David. I think I want to make a little bit of clarification on the accessory use. As it's defined right now, it's really focused on the second home owner. Those folks that are not living here permanently but choose to use their second home as an accessory, as an STR for the period of time that they're not here. That's kind of where it isn't meant to be. I mean, that's the way it's defined here, is a second homeowner. It's not. So I just want to make that clarification. And I also think that we need, this is a work in progress, so we need to clean up the definitions and our meaning and in our intent. So
maybe we did like a, for instance, like what you just said, and you could clarify it. So in the definition, accessory use, for instance, a second home that when you're not present that you could use, and that would be an accessory use. And maybe that's by giving examples in the definition, maybe that would clarify it, because we deal with this stuff that the guy who just bought a house doesn't get that at all. So maybe examples through the definition.
Well, definitely. I definitely things need to be clear, and otherwise they just cause confusion. So.
And if I recollect, the reason why this is in front of us now, and Jen, this might explain some things for you, which is what I recollect was in the last 2 meetings or so, we said to Courtney, we need a good definition of accessory use as it pertains to STRs. Can you please look at Montana code and other things and come back to us with something that we can work with? And so, did it come from Courtney? Sort of, but on our direction is what I recollect, that we asked her to do some digging around and help us come up with a definition in in this instance where they would be used as an STR so that we could grapple with some of these things.
All right. I
And
guess-
could I please add?
Sure.
I just want to say, this is not about throwing Courtney under the bus.
No.
She provided an example of what other communities use, and we discussed it at length, and we agreed to let it float